Silence dominated the undisturbed and dust-filled halls. Flakes of dust filtered through the narrow beams of light emanating from my flashlight. Every footstep I took disturbed the layers of debris that had built up over the millennia. It was clear the air filtration systems had failed long ago, but thankfully, some vestige of the air recycler system was functional enough that I could still breathe unaided. Though I couldn't chance it, not when I couldn't even guarantee help was on the way, or even existed beyond these four walls. I'd taken the initiative of ensuring the hallways were in fact safe, checking for pressure abnormalities, seal breaks on the other bulkhead doors, and of course, attempting to jumpstart the emergency power that should still be operational, especially after a measly 100,000 years of hibernation. Yet as I looked over my shoulder, my single flashlight illuminating the path I'd just taken, a very unnerving scene continued to unfold before me. If machines could hyperventilate, Ver would most certainly be going through the motions of it, as he remained completely unresponsive in the doorframe. His only movements being the repetitive motions he'd been preoccupied with for the past few minutes, a readjustment of his ear-like antenna, followed by a double tap of a touch interface built into his arm. I attempted to look past this for now, burying any deep-seated fears on aberrant thinking machines with my immediate concerns for survival. It wasn't long before I reached one of the control panels that had previously been overridden by some human interface during Elijah's time. The software was completely unintelligible. Human script dominated it, as glitches caused the screen to flicker every few seconds. I attempted to rectify this with a firm kick against the wall panel right next to the monitor, the compartment which housed its processing unit. A quick reboot and reset later, and it was back to its factory settings. Instinctively, I first checked the time since last access to properly orient myself with exactly when I was. The data seemed to corroborate the IE zone estimates, 84,939 years since last access and 127,939 years since hibernation began. This would imply that the last human visit or resupply had been exactly 43,000 years ago, to the T. With that being said, the rough reboot had overridden much in the way of detailed logs and files on the system, if the humans even did log anything on the local network, that is. I was able to access the backup power through here, and, elders willing, I was able to initialize some of the asteroid's power. This would at least give us some breathing room, literally, and a means of connecting with the outside world. There were strict protocols in place post-hibernation that would ensure at least a signal existed that any Vanran receiver could tune into. It was foolproof, and especially after hibernation, there would be hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of signals broadcasting an all clear. It was almost a sort of post-hibernation ritual for modern Vanarans, bringing a sense of relief quite akin to not having dead awoken. So whilst Ver would continue his attempts at establishing some sort of contact with the humans, I brought myself to at the very least make contact with my own people, fulfilling the final reassurance rituals of the post-awakening. Yet as I attempted to tune in, as I calibrated the dish to receive any and all Vanran signals, I received nothing. Where there should have been hundreds of thousands of transponders broadcasting an all clear, the system only registered one user on the network. The Denari clan hibernation complex. My legs practically gave way at that. I refreshed the page, hoping, desperately begging any and all elders above who would listen, to at least display the one constant on the network, the central transponder. It was a simple series of coded beeps on repeat, sure, but at the very least it was a constant. Even after the disastrous million-year hibernation, the central transponder was there to keep everything together. The loss of the central transponder meant the loss of the Vanran civilization itself. Nausea suddenly took hold. My head felt lighter than normal as I felt the world around me spinning. This wasn't possible, and yet the truth was staring me right in the face. I only managed to remain upright with my arms practically hugging the interface in front of me, hitting refresh over and over and over again. Until finally, even my arms gave in, as I crumpled to the floor in a heap, dust scattering all around me. The dull beeping of a system desperately trying to connect to any other transponders kept the halls from returning back into its dead, dreary state. Perhaps this was it? Perhaps this is how it ends? Not with a bang as Elijah would have wanted. But a sad, silent whimper. of two lost souls in an abandoned asteroid? How pitiful was it that... Beep. That noise. Beep, beep. It couldn't be. Beep, 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 beep. I quickly got back to my feet, scrambling towards the console, just as I saw those coveted words. Connection established. One signal. Coordinates: home galaxy, quadrant 4, cluster 22, sector 304, grid 03 to 92. Transponder ID, come. Attention. Attention. Priority message received from transponder ID, come. Messages as follows: there is a ship still attached to hibernation conduit 27A. It is safe to go outside. Message ends. I must have gone mad. This was in no way happening. This had to be a disastrous dream concocted by Elijah. This had to be. Yet as quickly as I had attempted to dismiss what I saw, the clacking of metal on metal could be heard from afar. I craned my head to see her approaching me at breakneck speeds, pointing towards the far end of the hallway. Lysara. Lysara. You won't believe what I found back there. There's a... ship attached to the station. I muttered out, completing his sentence for him, as the robot stood there, back straight, his face once more displaying a single question mark symbol. How did you know? Someone told me, on the transponder terminal. I pointed to the computer, which for now approached cautiously, standing before it as he started to interface with it, his screen going blank for a brief second. That signal's close, just a couple hundred light years away. But it doesn't make sense. If this message was sent by a Vanaran, they wouldn't have known about the ship. It's a United Nations Interstellar Forces vintage. And there's no records of any Vanaran hibernation conduit or station within 500 light years of my own. I assume you still haven't been able to connect with the humans as well. No. We looked at one another, at the terminal, then towards the end of the hall, which now felt far less safe than it had been just moments ago. Despite being brightly lit, it felt as if the entire asteroid was now blanketed with an indescribable darkness that threatened to consume us both. We have to get on that ship, and we have to find Elijah. I spoke firmly, my eyes meeting the robot's own, as it seemed taken aback by that. Elijah, he's dead, Lysara. We need to take that ship, I agree, but we aren't going to go around chasing ghosts. Then how do you explain the message, Ver? I can't. But still, there has to be a logical explanation to this. There has to. Listen, Vanaran, we'll follow the breadcrumbs for now. Maybe the ship will give me a signal boost, or something. Or better yet, maybe we can find something at the coordinates. Either way, there's no way Elijah is behind this. The robot spoke vehemently, taking point, as he now led the way toward the docked ship. Just as we reached the unassuming airlock, one that had previously led to the lab Elijah and I had spent most of our time in, Ver turned back toward me with a concerned look. You do understand that Elijah's dead, right? The human lifespan only lasts for about 200 years, 300 tops, if you vogged yourself out. There's no way a human, in his era especially, would have survived 127,939 years. I simply stood there, arms crossed, as I waited for the airlock to be opened. Lysara, I don't know how else to say it. I'm sorry for your loss. I know this is a lot to take in. Fuck, I'm at a loss here too. But I need you in tip-top shape, all right? Like, physically and mentally. I didn't respond, my eyes still trained stoically to the unopened airlock. Just vent to me if you need to. Because right now we only have each other to rely on. The robot offered, and once again with a genuine sentiment of concern that seemed to color his tone of voice despite everything. Perhaps I was starting to lose my grip on reality. Perhaps everything was happening too quickly. I just wanted answers, any answers. To that end, just as the airlock opened, I finally spoke up. Addressing the elephant in the room that I'd almost completely ignored up to this point. The interlopers. I muttered out, taking the first few tentative steps into what looked to be a pressure chamber that the robot promptly went around assessing. Yep. What about them? Ver responded, his hands now deep in a crevice behind an oddly shaped terminal. What happened to them? What happened during the human interloper war? Did humanity win? Yet that was all it said in response, as a sudden thunk followed whatever it had done behind that terminal. The lights within the small room glowed to life as I once more strained to see. Quickly remembering the goggles Elijah had given me, I donned them only to find the straps completely missing. I forced it on anyways, and after securing it with the loose cable on the floor, my eyes quickly adjusted. "Well, I think we won," Ver quickly added, before another loud series of metallic clunks filled the room. White gases hissed from the walls, and a sudden lurching nearly tossed me off my feet. "We're free from the station. Ship seems to be running quite well for something that's 43,000 years old. This seems to be the last resupply ship to the station. Anyways, yet the interlopers. I'm pretty sure we won." The way this reality-altering news was being delivered was almost laughable. "What do you mean you think you won, Ver?" "Well, like I said before, most of my memories were stored in my actual body. This thing barely has enough of my memories to make me, so I'm working off of the vague hints of history I have from my own life experiences. And from what I recall, the interlopers were yesterday's news in my time. Most of the worries were on internal affairs and on the issue of SVI's and humanity's continued role in helping the hibernatives. So extrapolating from my experiences, and through logical deduction, I say we won. If we hadn't, then I don't think humanity would have survived long enough to fight the Great Civil War of the 9 virtual constructs, right? And yet you cannot contact humanity as is. Is it possible you're misremembering? Is it possible the interlopers had some sort of a hand in causing humanity's disappearance? No. We are not going down the path of existential self-doubt. Because if we're doing the "is my memory integrity reliable" game, then literally nothing is for certain. So let's just go with the assumption that my logical deductions are accurate, and work with what we have right now: humanity's missing status, and your people's apparent disappearance, if your transponder terminal is any indication. Without the added complication of the interloper's sudden and inexplicable return. A silence descended between us at that, as only the noise of the main airlock rolling to one side punctuated the otherwise tense standoff. A brightly lit hallway greeted us both, one that seemed to go on for a good few hundred meters. I followed the robot silently, toward what I assumed was the cockpit. How large is this ship anyways? I attempted to break the ice. Fostering bad blood between the two of us wasn't the most ideal strategy in this situation, after all. 1,225 meters from Boda's stern, sans engine nacelles. She's a Reliant 7 class multi-purpose light cruiser, modular, capable of literally swapping out anything attached to her space frame, from dedicated weapons platforms all the way to bulk cargo transport. This workhorse does it all. And your internal memory modules have that tidbit of information, and nothing on the interlopers. No, it doesn't. I just read the ship's general description off of the manual I accessed when I interfaced with it. We finally reached what was clearly the cockpit, or rather, a control room of sorts. It was a far cry from the normally cramped cockpit of Vanaran vessels. This room was absurdly spacious. A captain's chair dominated the center of the whole space, acting like the hub to the spokes that were the various consoles and seats situated to the front and to either side of it. Just behind it, and what we first encountered, was an absurdly large holographic display table, which promptly began interfacing with computer. This is Synthetic Virtual Intelligence Designation, VIR. Access level, Administrative Auditor. Identity acknowledged. Request admin privilege override. Administration privileges parsing error. SVI designation, VIR. Status, incarcerated under Directive 998-1s. Computer, recognize redesignation of incarcerated status. My charge, Lasarata El Parfundaner, is now awake. The parameters of my incarceration have been fulfilled. I am now free. Parsing new parameters accepted. Recognized, presence of alien. Species, Vanaran. Identity, Lasarata El Parfundaner. The robot seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, its face now displaying those two eyes, with a single exaggerated sweat drop on its brow. Computer. Request admin privilege override. Parsing confirmed. Ship Systems and Controls recognizes Temporary Administrator, VIR. Awaiting orders. Vir had now planted himself on one of the many seats that flanked the table, placing a hand atop his head and wiping away the sweat drop that had formed on its brow. Priority Order 1, set destination to these coordinates. Affirmative. Spooling up jump drive. Priority Order 2, ascertain food stores and prepare one meal compatible with Vanaran physiology. Affirmative. Estimated time to jump, 1 minute. Estimated time to meal delivery, 10 minutes. The robot now turned towards me, placing an arm on the table, barely holding itself from sprawling out. We'll hopefully get our answer soon enough. Let us hope that is the case. I nodded, before quickly adding, this ship seems remarkably functional for its age, but I would be remiss if I didn't inquire on the status of the FTL drives. It is customary for Vanarans to perform extensive tests on any FTL systems after an extended period of hibernation. The robot let out what could only be described as a mechanical cackle, this time bringing up something of a mischievous grin that bordered on a smirk. Guess we'll see, won't we? Jump drive initiating.